Hello, and welcome to the KISS Web Development Framework Introduction Series. This is Part 2, Setup and Configuration. Let's get to it. In this video, we will be covering the following. First, we will reiterate the system requirements. This is something we covered in the last video. I will then show you how to download, configure, build, and run the system. You'll be a bit shocked at how simple it is. I will then show how to build the documentation and what is available. Lastly, we'll cover some of the basics of using KISS with your favorite IDE. After this slide, all of the demonstrations will be done using a live system. Although I use Linux, the system works equally well with Mac or Windows. As mentioned in the previous video, you will need the source code control system Git and Java. I will be using, and what I recommend is Java 8. To be sure you have Git, you can type the following. And to be sure you have Java, you can type the following. Okay, so everything looks good there. Now, first of all, we're going to be downloading into a new directory named KISS. So let's make sure it doesn't exist already. Nope, doesn't exist. Okay, so I'm going to clone that from the GitHub repository. So I use the following command, and when you go to Git, when you go to GitHub, it actually tells you what the command is. Okay, so now let's go into the directory we just created, and this is the KISS system which we just downloaded. So now the next thing we need to do is to build it and run it. We're going to build and run it using the default configuration. KISS comes with a built-in, its own custom build systems to make things as simple as possible. So I'm going to type in /build develop. Okay, the system has been built and it's actually running right now. It actually did this faster for me than it will for you because I've downloaded the third-party libraries before. The build system does that automatically, but it also caches that. So after the first time, it builds as quickly as you just saw. So now let's see what it said when we ran it. It says you can browse to HTTP localhost 8000, and it also says you can be debugged at port 9000 and hit any key to stop it. We don't want to stop it right now. So let me bring in a browser. I bring in a browser, and it told me to go to localhost 8000. Oh, there's the system. Okay, so we're going to start it up with the default password, which is KISS, and the default username is KISS, and the default password is password. And that brings up the sample that just comes with the system. So first we have a button here that has the controls. So we can have a text control, numeric control, won't let you put any numbers in it or any letters in it, date, time, checkbox, radio button, drop down lists, list box, text box, pop-ups, okay, all these various things. So I'm going to put in like the number, I'm going to put some big number, and when I tab out, you'll notice that it puts commas and stuff like that with the number, so it's very easy to read. The pop-up button brings up a pop-up, and I can drag that around, and it'll put whatever I want in there. And if I click OK, it says here text is required. So the system automatically does error checking for you. So here I'll say text has to be some letters in there. And now it says numeric must be between 10 and 100. So we'll have to put a smaller number here. I'll put 44. Okay, so it accepted that. So this just gives you an idea of some of the controls in there. A lot of these are built into HTML, and a lot of these have been enhanced by the KISS system, which we'll go into further a little later. This is a screen that shows the REST services. So if I put in a number here and put in a number here and call Groovy, it comes up with some response. So it's basically taking those two numbers and performing some kind of calculation on it, and this is the result that it performs. Likewise, we have a REST service, a backend REST service in Java, and you can see that it's doing some other calculation over here. Lastly, we can also write the backend services in Common Lisp. So if I do that, it'll automatically call the Common Lisp code. Now it takes a couple of seconds the first time you call it because it's booting up the Lisp system internally, but after that it's very quick, just like it is in Java or Groovy. Okay, then we have a CRUD example. This is an example of a create, read, update, and delete screen. So here you see a grid with the records that are in there. I'm going to add a new record. Let's say Blake McBride. Put in my phone number. And so there you see it added it. And if I say, oh, I forgot to put in the 615, I can double click on the record and say 615. And it updates the record there. So you see that edit and delete are grayed out, but if I select a record, now I can edit or I can delete the record. And I can say yes, and you can see it deleted the record. The system also has reporting facilities, so if I click report, here you see a PDF report that comes out. The system generates that. And lastly, we have export. So this will generate a CSV export file. Then we have a file upload example. So I'll choose a file. Let's say I choose, I don't know, build.xml here. And I upload, and it says upload successful. There it is. And lastly, you can log out of the system. The system has built-in authentication, and it also persists the data out to a database of your choosing. It comes by default with an SQLite built-in database with it, but it can also work with Postgres or MySQL or Microsoft SQL Server or so on and so forth. So all of the data that we entered, anything we enter is persisted out to these databases. So now let's go back over here. On this screen, it said to hit any key to stop the server. So I hit a key, and now it says it stopped the server. So let's see. I'm going to click login. Oh, server doesn't work anymore. Okay, so you can see now it had stopped the system. I will now show you how the system is configured. System configuration is controlled by a single file located at source main application kissinit.groovy. I'll show you. So I can say open a file, source main application kissinit.groovy. So this is the entire contents of the file. The only things that you'd really want to set are what's shown over here. So first of all, the first line here tells it what kind of database that we're using, SQLite. If you were using Microsoft SQL Server or MySQL or something, then this last part would say something different. The available options are documented in the documentation that comes with the system. This tells us where the host is, so that we're using it on localhost. It's a local machine. This tells us what the name of the database is, the user name on the database, and the password on the database. And then this one here tells us how many worker threads we're going to use. So basically, the system runs in parallel with multiple threads. So if up to 30 people come into the system, then those 30 people will be operated on the system concurrently. If more than 30 people come in, they'll be put on a queue, and they'll be processed as soon as the other 30 or some portion of those are done. So this way you can control the maximum load on your server. It won't begin to thrash. So if you can set that number to anything you want, you could set it up to 100 or whatever you think is reasonable in your situation. This max log off seconds tells us that if nobody hits a key in a certain number of seconds, it'll automatically log them out of the system. So this protects you, so in case they go to lunch, that the system won't just sit there forever. And then this last option tells the system whether it's going to print some additional logging information into the system log. It's set to true here. If you don't want it, you can turn it off. Now, when that file is changed, you have to restart the server. So you'd have to stop it and start it again in order to get this new information set. Likewise, if you're going to use a different database and you set all these things to different databases, you'd have to probably initialize that database as well with some data. For example, when the system authenticates with the username and password, there would have to be a username and password in that system. So let me show you where that's set up. So there's a file here called init.sql, which the system doesn't do anything with it. It's just kind of sitting there, but it's something you would use to initialize a new database. So this just basically sets up a table called users, and there's also a test table here that it's used in the demo that I just showed you. The system has 3 forms of documentation: a user manual, a Java API reference, and a JavaScript API reference. All 3 are viewable with a standard browser. The Java API reference, or Java doc, must be built by you through the supplied build system as follows. That's all there is to it. So let's take a look with our browser, and let's take a look at the documentation. I'll bring a browser here. I go to File. Let's see, Blake, Kiss. So there's the main directory. Let me go into Manual, Man, and Index. So here's the user manual. So it has all the hyperlinks and everything, so you can just go to any point you want. You can also print this. The next documentation I'll show you is the JavaScript doc, JavaScript API reference. Go to JS doc and index, and here it is. So I can go, let's see what they got with radio buttons, list box, so on and so forth. Lastly, we'll look at the Java API reference. Let's see, that's the parent. That gets put, and all the location of all these documents is talked about and told to you in the user manual. That would be build.work, Java doc, index. So there you have it, just a plain Java doc for everything as you're normally used to looking at. My suggestion would be to start with the user manual and use the API reference as needed. You can use your favorite IDE to develop with KISS. The particulars of setting up KISS with your favorite IDE is beyond the scope of this series, but should be straightforward. I will be using the IntelliJ Community Edition IDE in many of my examples. One thing to keep in mind is that through the use of microservices and other techniques, KISS applications do not follow the edit, build, deploy, debug pattern typically used. With KISS, building and deploying are unnecessary. Code changes that you make take effect immediately. Internally, KISS still fully compiles everything, so everything always runs at full speed. KISS detects file changes and only compiles what is needed. Although an IDE can be made to build and deploy the system, I strongly recommend that you let the build system supplied with KISS do that for you. You'll mainly be using the IDE to edit and debug your applications. In what follows, the IntelliJ IDE will be used, and I'll be using the built-in build system to build it. So here we go to KISS, and I'm going to build the system and deploy it. So that's it, it's running. Note here that it says the application can also be debugged at port 9000. So that'll be important to us here. So for starters, let me bring over the IntelliJ Community Edition IDE. Now, in this case, all I've done is imported the project. I have not configured anything or any kind of special settings or anything like that. It's just a raw import. So here I'll say run, and I'll say attach to process. Now, as we saw over here, it said 9000. So we also see here port 9000. So I bring that up. Okay, so that's it. Right now we're debugging the application. So if I go back here and I go to my browser and go localhost 8000, I bring up the application, and let me go to default username is KISS, default password is password, and we're in the system, and then I'm going to go to the REST service. First I want to put a breakpoint, so I'll go back to the IDE, and I'm going to go to KISS main services, or all my web services are going to be right here, and I'm going to bring up one of the Java services. So this is a complete web service. Basically, as you can see, the service is called my Java service, and the web method is add numbers. And here it's just getting some information and responding with the addition of the two. So if I say here 44 and 66, well, first let me go back here and put a breakpoint. I'll put a breakpoint right there. So then if I say call Java, it stops right there, as you can see. And we can look at the variables that came in. It came in 44 and 55, and it's going to return the addition of the two. So if I say continue, here we'll display the addition of the two, which is 99. So that's all there is to debugging with the system. So basically you build and deploy the system with the internal build system, and then you bring up your server, attach to port 9000, and you're ready to go. So for example, we could change this code. If I said number 1 plus number 2 plus 100, right? And I save that file. File save. And then I come here and I say 4455 call Java. Oh, got a breakpoint, 4455. And I'm going to say continue past that breakpoint. And here we have 199. So you see that I changed the code and it immediately changed the way the application works. Thank you for viewing this video. Following videos in this series will go into the details regarding developing with the KISS system. We will be discussing things like web services, front-end development, data persistence, and production deployment. Thank you.